I'm thinking about presence and attention. And by presence, I mean a couple of things. Yeah, I've got quite a wide definition, I guess, of that. Partly I'm thinking about it in terms of charisma, as Weber talks about it and other people. But I'm also thinking about presence in terms of theatrical presence. That kind of semi-mythological property that certain performers are supposed to have, and which appears in its most cheesy form in concepts like the X Factor. So, in terms of presence, what am I thinking about that? Well, I'll tell you what I'm not thinking about. What I'm not thinking about right now is that idea of presence as a kind of phenomenological aspect of one's being in place, the feeling of being present, the feeling of being absorbed in the activity of one's own life, the feeling of being kind of infinitely close to one's own centre of narrative gravity or something like that. That feeling of being exactly here and precisely now, contrasted with feeling disassociated, something like that. I'm not really talking about that, as I say, subjective, phenomenological feeling of presence. I'm talking about the attribution of a quality called presence to other individuals. And there might well be a relationship, and I think there is a relationship between those things. But that's not what I'm interested in right now. But I'm interested in that quality that we say people have. I say, that actor's really got a lot of presence, or that individual's got a lot of presence. Kind of very similar to charisma, as I say. The other idea, which I'm trying to link to that, is the idea of attention. I think I've spoken about this before, but I can't remember what I've spoken about on these videos half the time. Which is why I'm making them, I guess. But in terms of attention, I'm thinking of that as, obviously it's a kind of limited resource that individuals have. Right now I have a certain amount of attention, and it's distributed across a number of different activities that I'm engaged in. Some of my attention is on the words that I'm saying, obviously. But I'm sharing that attention with a kind of maintenance activity that my own body is engaged in to make sure I don't fall over. I'm kind of attending to where I'm walking, although it's not the focus of my attention, it's still definitely there. I'm attending partially to my surroundings. For example, I'm attending to this dog that's coming up the drive, up the canal path towards me, which means I'm going to have to take my dogs off the canal. Come on, guy! So that's just as well. I had a bit of attention left over there. Go into this field. So my attention is variously distributed, but there is only a limited amount of it. And it's highly selective. And I know it's selective. I know it's selective in personal experience. I've had lots of those experiences like most people have, where you're looking for something and it's right in front of you and you don't see it, so your attention is just not correctly primed or something. But also from those studies on attention, like the famous gorilla one, where I think it was I can't remember, one of the American universities, where two teams are passing basketballs around, and the instruction is to watch one of the teams to see how many times they bounce the ball on the ground. And whilst you're watching and whilst they're playing this game, the guy in a gorilla suit walks into the middle of the screen that you're watching, beats his chest and then walks off again. But unless you're told that's going to happen, your attention is entirely on the game, so you usually don't see it. And it's quite surprising when you look at the video next time around and there it is, there's this gorilla and you completely didn't see it. So again, that's an example of attention being attention as a kind of resource which is being allocated specifically to certain activities, and which is capable of a certain amount of steering. So in that example, we can have our attention drawn specifically through an instruction to one aspect of the visual field, the basketball players in that case, and that can be at the detriment of other things that are happening in the space. So attention is this kind of limited resource that we're always distributing at various times, which can always be distracted if something serious or something dangerous happens or something fantastic happens. Our attention can instantly swing to it, and a lot of our attentional resources can be placed on that thing and distribute itself variously. So the reason why I'm talking about attention is that what I was talking about before, just to do with theatrical presence or charisma, is in my understanding of it at least, a kind of an ability. Actually, that's not quite the right word. It's the circumstances under which attention is selectively drawn to a particular individual. So if you have 6 people on stage together, let's say, and you find yourself paying particular attention to one of them, you would characterize that experience as being one in which that person had presence. You would probably not say, you'd probably not define it in terms of your own attention, unless there were very specific things going on. I mean, like for example, in a lot of, not a lot perhaps, but excuse me, certainly in some theatre work, if there is a member of the performance company, let's say, who is particularly sexually attractive, a man or a woman who is particularly sexually attractive, not because the role demands it, not because the performance demands it, they just are, you might find yourself looking at that person more than is perhaps appropriate for the rest of the performance. I can think of, I've got one performance in mind actually. I'll think about that. I better not go into detail. But yeah, you probably wouldn't think about that afterwards. In fact, you probably certainly wouldn't talk about it afterwards, and you certainly wouldn't build it into any kind of critique afterwards. So, nevertheless, there's something going on there to do with attractiveness. You wouldn't say that person had presence, theatrical presence. You'd kind of deny it, I guess, or talk about it in a different way. But there's definitely some oddities to do with the ability to attract attention, and our designation of that as the possession of stage presence or theatrical presence. Where am I going with this? Not quite sure yet, but what I want to, I guess, just to kind of wrap this bit up, one of the things I'm saying there is that in presence terms, or in terms of charisma more generally, that whilst there might well be something that a person can do who is in that situation on stage, in a kind of leadership role, in a position where they need to command attention of some kind, there probably are things they can do. Well, there are things they can do, obviously, otherwise I wouldn't be in the job I'm doing right now. But a lot of the circumstances surrounding that event are what produce the condition of presence through the selective organization of attention, the selective focusing of attention. So a lot of it's to do with context. I think there's an analogy actually from visual art. When I was at school years ago, my art teacher said, he was quoting an artist actually, but he didn't tell us what the artist was, and I can't remember any of the what he was saying. But he was basically saying that if you've got a painting, what the attractiveness of a particular colour isn't dependent upon the colour, it's dependent upon the painting. So you can colour something with mud on the painting, and if you do it right, then that mud looks fantastic and it will attract the eye and it would look stunning. There's something about that context which sets up the circumstances of selective attention, commands larger amounts of the limited attentional resources, and then that command becomes externalized and considered as something to do with the mud itself, the person themselves, the activity that's going on, and we say it's got presence.